Many Muslims feel that your conclusions, your historical conclusions of who Jesus Christ is more commensurate with the Muslim idea than it is with the Christian one.
I wouldn't say that they line up well with the Muslim view. I really do think Jesus was crucified and that he really was dead and buried.
I mean, how dumb can you be? Do you really think Ehrman's going to go, wow, you're saying your book, blah, 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 blah. I guess I'll convert to Islam. How do I do it? How do I do that, by the way? Oh, no problem, brother. You just recite this. Oh, okay. La ilaha illallah.
I really do think Jesus was crucified and that he really was dead and buried.
How much can we be sure about the crucifixion of Jesus and whether he was indeed crucified?
Right. I know in Islam, the teaching is that he was not actually crucified. I think on a historical basis, Jesus was absolutely crucified. I think that there is, as a historian, there's almost no doubt about that.
Now, the Islamic perspective, that's where I bring my stuff in. Now, the Islamic perspective, as you know, is somebody was crucified on that day, but Jesus was not crucified. The Quran is very firm on this. Jesus was definitely not crucified, but somebody was made to appear like him, and Jesus was raised to heaven instead. I would like to ask you, from a historical perspective, from the perspective of a historian who deals with these matters, what is the evidence for and against this, and how credible is such a narrative?
I would say there's no actual evidence for it. The one piece of evidence for it is a piece of evidence that no historian would accept. But I guess you would count it as evidence, apart from the Quran. So just bracketing the Quran itself. The Quran gets many of its stories. It doesn't tell that many stories about Jesus, but most of the stories about Jesus that it tells had earlier been found in the early Christian tradition. And this one, the story about them crucifying someone else, is apparently was found in a gospel that was known in the 2nd century, that was written by a Christian Gnostic, a Gnostic, like a Christian heretic named Basilides. What Basilides said was that what happened was Jesus was going to be crucified, and Simon of Cyrene was carrying his cross for him. This figure, Simon of Cyrene, is found in the New Testament. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it says that Simon carried his cross. And so, according to Basilides, what happened is when they got to the place of crucifixion, Jesus pulled a miracle, and he made Simon look just like him, and he took on the appearance of Simon. And so the Romans thought they were crucifying Jesus, but they crucified Simon. And Jesus stood by the cross in looking like Simon, laughing. Presumably Simon didn't think it was so funny. Here he is. He's been what? And so that's the only early Christian source for it. It's not, there's nobody thinks that like is actually evidence for anything, because we get these Gnostic gospels with all sorts of interesting crucifixion things. That just happens to be one of them. I think he thought that he was a son of God in the sense that he was specially chosen by God. I think Jesus really did think he was going to be the Messiah, the future king of Israel. I mean, that is, after all, why they crucified him. I think that that's historically right.
What about the word father? Abba, I believe that's it, right? Is that something that is historically verifiable, that was used by him?
Well, it's likely that he used it. So father is a different word. Abba is more like, Abba means father, but it's more like a term of endearment, more like daddy or something like that. And so I think he did use the term father as well. For example, in the Lord's Prayer, if he taught this prayer, which I imagine he did, our Father who's in heaven. But at times in prayer, or sometimes he would address God as Abba. And since that's not a common usage at the time in Judaism, it looks like it's something that he did, and it's used to express his kind of close relationship with God as the Son of God. I think that all of these gospel authors, I think all of them think that in some sense Jesus is God. I think that these earliest Christians, though, right after his death, believed that God had raised him from the dead and taken him up to heaven. And in the ancient views, whether it's Greek or Roman or Christian or Jewish, these ancient views, if somebody's taken up to heaven, they're living with God. They are made immortal, so they don't die again, unlike everyone else who dies again. An immortal is just another name for gods in ancient Greek. Jesus was made immortal, and I think that according to his followers, and so they started worshiping him. They didn't worship him as the one only God, but he was a being who deserved worship, and so they considered him to be the Lord whom they worshipped. And I think that happened early on, but they understood that during his life he was a human. Mm-hmm. They would not have agreed with most of the tenets of Islam that differ from Christianity. Paul, I think, certainly had a vision of Jesus. He thought, by vision, I don't mean it's a hallucination. I mean he saw something, mm-hmm. and either it was a hallucination, in other words, the thing wasn't there, or it really was Jesus. But either way, he saw something, and some of the earlier disciples did too. That's why they believed in the resurrection. They absolutely didn't believe because of an empty tomb. The New Testament is clear on this. They believed because they saw Jesus, and I think some of them absolutely saw. I doubt if all 11 did, but my guess is that a couple of them did. Maybe Peter, maybe Mary Magdalene. They're the ones who were first credited with seeing Jesus, and so I think they had some kind of visionary experience. And Christians would say, well, they saw Jesus, he appeared. And non-Christians would say, well, they had hallucinations. But either way, I think they saw something mm-hmm. that convinced them that Jesus was raised, yes.
Okay, so I'm guessing that a lot of the debate's going to come down to whether we should take whatever those experiences were seriously.
I take them deadly seriously.
Oh, okay.
I think they saw something.
What about James? So you just go with the Gospels. Doesn't look like James had much confidence in his brother during that time, but later becomes an apostle. Yeah. So what's your perspective there?
I don't think we know. I think he certainly came to believe Jesus was raised from the dead, and so it's quite remarkable, whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian, that Jesus' own brother believed he got raised from the dead. Just think about that for a second. Think about your own siblings for a while. Wow, really? My siblings don't think I'm the son of God. I got to tell you that. And so something remarkable must have happened. It doesn't mean that necessarily he had a personal experience. Paul says he did. And Paul knew him. Which, by the way, throws a bit of a monkey wrench in the mythicist argument that Jesus didn't exist.
That's true.
Paul knows his brother.
Yeah.
If Jesus didn't exist, you would think his brother would know about it.
One of the issues is, as you know, Muslims generally believe that the text of the New Testament must have began in some stage where it was a book brought by Jesus. And so it's this book brought by Jesus, and then it later on gets corrupted into eventually the four Gospels we have now. But Muslims here, well, Bart Ehrman talks about all these textual variants, hundreds of thousands of textual variants in the Gospels. And they think, just because I talk to them all the time, but they really think that there are all these different versions of the Gospels that say all these kinds of different things with different doctrines, and that somewhere in there there's material that agrees with them on what the Quran says, and then different Gospels elsewhere. And is that what you would get from textual criticism?
No, I tell you, it's not just Muslims, of course. The conservative evangelicals accuse me of say that I say things I just don't say. I just don't know if people can't read anymore or what. But, when I talk about all these differences in the manuscripts, it's not a debated point. There are hundreds of thousands of differences. But I also say that most of them are completely immaterial and insignificant. Most of them are misspelled words. It's like there are not variants in the New Testament that say Jesus didn't die, or that Jesus made clay pigeons, or that somebody else got crucified instead of Jesus. No, that's not what I'm talking about. And so they read into what I say, what I don't say, and it's very frustrating.
The goal seems to be, let's interview some guys who don't know a lot about Islam, so we can say whatever we want, and we can use them help them be our kind of megaphone to reach their fans with all this stuff about Islam, and they're not going to know enough to correct it. And so, hey, let's see if we can get an interview with Bart Ehrman. He doesn't know a lot about Islam. Let's see if we can get an interview with Jordan Peterson. Let's see if we can get interviews with these guys, and that way we can deceive. It's this race. Can we deceive people faster than other people can correct all the lies?